Thank you for listening to On the Air with Jeannette Seibly. It's your time for success. I'm coming to you from the Mile High City of Denver, Colorado. My focus each week is to share with you success tips, insights, and how to do it that help you achieve the results and successes you've always wanted in your business, in your career, and in other areas of your life. Are you ready to uncover the success you've always wanted? Keep listening. Welcome. In this podcast, I'm going to be providing you the last 7 steps of the 19 steps that we've been reviewing on how to conduct the best virtual interviews. So this is part 3 of 3 parts. The first 2 podcasts are available on the same channel that you are listening to this one. So back to conducting the best virtual interviews. Remember, winging it rarely produces the best results and will impact your reputation and the quality of job candidates that will accept your offers and not ghost you. I would recommend including these steps for on-site interviews too, as things get back to the new normal. I realize that the 19 steps may sound cumbersome. However, let me share with you a story. When I started working with a client, he had been winging the interview and hiring processes for his company for 5 years. After all, he was the business owner, and no one was going to tell him how to run his business, and that included how he hired people. So even though he had high turnover, he lied to himself that it was just part of being in business. To justify his lack of a strategic hiring process, he stated, "My turnover is lower than industry standards." The truth was, he wasn't willing to take the time to do the work required to hire top talent. So mistakes continued to happen until he finally hired a good employee. And yes, it can happen even with the trial and error approach. The good news is the good employee started questioning the business owner about how he conducted his interviews and hired people. The good employee was kind of tired of having to train the bad people and just have them leave 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months later, or hope they would leave soon. The good employee also provided charts and financial data showing the cost and negative impact on morale and why they were about to lose a major client. This time the business owner listened. He was scared about losing his entire business if the major client left. So we asked another business owner what to do, and that's how I met him. He was very coachable. He followed all 19 steps, especially the ones I'm going to be sharing with you today. And as he started hiring better employees, they stayed. And he found that his business grew and his bottom line improved. And yes, this happens a lot more times than it doesn't. 6 months later, and this was like the frosting on the cake, 6 months later, he said to me, "I wish I would have met you when I started this business 5 years ago. I've made some of the worst hiring mistakes for all the wrong reasons. It cost me time, money, and relationships, and probably a lot of customers too. It's harder to get new customers than keeping current customers happy, and hiring the wrong people do not keep customers happy." And then he added, "Thank you for guiding me to do a better job. These 19 steps really aren't that hard or time-consuming when you compare with them with the benefits of doing the best job of hiring the right people for the right jobs the first time." So listeners, I challenge you to not lose your business or your job because you do a poor job of hiring the right people for the right job. Listen, learn, and implement. Again, this is part 3 of 3 parts. And part 1 and part 2 are the URLs are available in the podcast overview for this podcast. So here you go, the last 7 tips or steps. Conducting the best virtual interviews. Step or tip number 12. Be sure everyone is visible on your monitor during group or panel interviews. Virtual interview processes are not the same as on-site ones. And I recommend having everyone that's on the panel or the interviewing team be on their own laptop or desktop and use the conferencing system. Otherwise, people will be hidden from view, and when somebody is hidden, and talking, it can be very distracting to the job candidate. Step number 13. Shouldn't need to say this, but I have been at this for a long time. So step 13 is turn off electronic devices and other distractions. This keeps everyone focused and saves time spent in the interview. Remember, multitasking is a myth, and saying, well, I gotta wait for this very important call. What that tells candidates is they're not important. So again, turn them all off. It's only an hour or so. Step number 14, introductions. Start the virtual interview by introducing yourself. Keep it to 20 seconds. Practice in front of a mirror. Again, you don't want to get long-winded here. You don't want to have people looking like they're in a daze because you're talking too much. So practice setting up a great context for the interview by how you introduce yourself. If in a group, have each interviewer introduce themselves in a 20-second introduction. The basics would be state the name, the title, and how the job that they're interviewing the candidate for, how does that impact their area? The key here is to keep it short and focused on the job candidate. Step number 15, share what to expect during the virtual interview process with job candidates. So for example, this is how I would set up a job interview. Today I am, or we are if you're doing it with a team, conducting the first set of interviews for XXX position. This will take approximately 1 hour. Have you scheduled this amount of time for our conversation? And this is an important question to ask, because if they haven't, then they start watching the clock, they start getting nervous, if you guys start talking too long, etc. The point here, and the point I've been making, particularly in part 2, is you want to make sure that the job candidate feels valued. So if they have not scheduled the amount of time that you anticipate needing, suggest that you reschedule to ensure consistency in the interview process. Keep in mind, they'll say, oh, no, this is fine. But the problem then becomes they get hurried, you get hurried, and it's not a great result. I would also then, if they have not scheduled the appropriate amount of time, I would also check to make sure that your emails that you're sending to the job candidate, scheduling their interviews, indicate how long the job interview will be for. And you want to do this, whether it's a virtual interview or an on-site interview, you want to show that you respect and value their time. Tip number 16, or step number 16, ask your prepared structured interview questions. This will allow you and your team to objectively compare job candidates. It's very important that you ask the same questions, and it is required by law. So I don't get to be interviewing a person for an accounts payable position and ask one candidate a set of questions and another candidate for the same position a separate set of questions. You need to ask the same questions of everyone for a particular job. Step number 17, listen by looking directly into the camera. Also speak directly into the mic. Maintain eye contact without staring. This is important because some of you just don't have a lot of experience on virtual interviews, and you may mumble. You may not like how you look on camera. You may have a hard time continually looking at people. The key here is they don't have a lot of other things to see on their monitor, and you do want to make sure that your video is on so that they can see you. Do the best you can. Speak slowly and clearly. Yes, I know you may be nervous, but they're more nervous than you are. So you want to take the high road here. Number 18, deep dive into the job candidate's answers to determine actual hands-on experience. It's important to know the quality of their skills and the ability to use these skills in different situations that are applicable in your company. Keep in mind that job candidates today are savvier than ever. They're also trained on how to answer your questions. I recommend deep diving into their responses or using what I call a rule of 3. And what you're doing is if, say for example, again, let's use the accounts payable example, they might say, yes, I have used QuickBooks. Well, that doesn't tell you anything. And they may have used it, but not successfully. The first deep dive would be, what is one specific challenge you have faced? And help them get very specific. The next one to deep dive further is, how did you resolve the issue? And then the third, what specifically did you do? Now, by this time, if they don't really have a lot of experience and they've been blowing smoke, you're going to know. You're going to know. So at that time, you have to make a decision. Is this job position where you need somebody who's highly qualified and already trained, or is it a job where you can provide on-the-job training? And you're looking to ensure that they're qualified for the job and you're clear what kind of training you're going to need to provide them so that there are no surprises on day 1 or during week 2. The key is, when you're doing this rule of 3 or deep diving, do not sound like an interrogator, since that will hinder a positive job candidate experience. And then last but not least, step 19 or tip 19, at the end of the interview, not the beginning, share the following information. And here's why you wait. You want job candidates to tell you who they really are, not tell you what they think you want to hear based on the information that you may have shared. Some of this information is already going to be on the job posting. It's going to be out there on the internet. So they should have already done their homework. What you want to do is share, and again, keep everything short and on point, the vision and mission of the company, the job title, and top 3 to 5 key job responsibilities. And I'm going to say this several times to really make sure that this gets ingrained in you. Do not negotiate at this time. So if someone says, I really wanted to have a manager title, this is not the time to negotiate. The next one is do a quick review of the 180-day plan that we talked about in part 1, with a specific focus on the goals for this quarter and the next one. Share the reporting structure, potential start date, and again, do not negotiate. It's not the time. And again, do not conduct salary or benefit negotiations until you are ready to make a job offer. Then share what's next. So if they're selected for a future job interview, what can they expect? So it might be future interviews are conducted by team members, could be probably also a due diligence process that's talked about in part 1. You may need to complete assessments. The key that you want to do and make sure you follow up and follow through on is notifying them of the status each and every time. Be responsible. This is the bottom line. Be responsible for following up and following through on any promises made. Remember the story from part 2. Conducting the best virtual interviews means you are well prepared, focused, and follow your company's policies and procedures. Remember, if you don't, job candidates will share their less than positive virtual interview experiences on social media. So not only does it hurt your reputation with customers, it can also hurt your reputation to attracting top talent. To wrap up, I will be providing the first 2 podcasts in the description box for this podcast overview. And I trust these tips/steps will make a positive difference for you and your company. As always, if you have any questions, please contact me. Until next time, I want to thank you for listening to On the Air with Jeannette Seibly. It's your time for success. Tune in next week for more insights on how to achieve the success you've always wanted with my straight talk for dynamic results. Until then, enjoy a great and successful week.